Okay, so we've talked about contracting systems, and we said a contracting system has to do three things. It must give us the requirements for a valid contract. It must provide guidance for performance of that contract to know when we have performed. And it must provide a remedy in the event there is a failure of performance or unsatisfactory performance. Now, for every transaction, only one contracting system will apply. Keep that in mind because we're going to go through on your test a number of different transactions, and I will ask you which contracting system applies to this transaction. And the answer is always going to involve only one contracting system. We cannot have two contracting systems, two different contracting systems applying to one transaction. We start in the United States. There are three different contracting systems that you must know. And the first is what we call the common law, sometimes referred to as case law. The common law governs contracts that relate to services. I pay you money in exchange for a service. It governs contracts related to real estate, real property. It governs contracts regarding employment, and it governs contracts regarding insurance. So any of these contracts that we execute are going to be governed by the common law contracting system. So in your 3213 class, your introductory business law class, this is the contracting system that you studied, was the common law contracting system. A set of rules that comes to us over years having developed in cases and through the adjudication of disputes. The second contracting system in the United States is found in Article 2 of the Uniform Commercial Code. And this governs contracts for the sale of goods across most of the United States. So this is the contracting systems that's going to apply to the sale of goods. Now you might first of all ask, what is a good? A good is a tangible, movable item. So a chair is a good. A desk is a good. Groceries are goods. Goods can even include animals that aren't born yet, or growing crops. Anything that is tangible, meaning I can reach out and touch it, or movable. I can pick it up and take it from one place to another. And Article 2 of the Uniform Commercial Code governs contracts for the sale of goods. In fact, Article 2 will govern sales of consumer goods, even involving international transactions. But don't worry about that right now. Just focus on Article 2, UCC governs contracts for the sale of goods. Article 2 of the Uniform Commercial Code is the contracting system that provides the rules for the sale of goods. Now, the U.S. Uniform Commercial Code is not a law. Instead, it was really a model law that was designed to unify sales law across the country. Now, the law of sales was originally drawn from English common law and contract law. But what this meant was that as the common law developed differently in different parts of the country, that the law of sales in one state may not be the law of sales in another state. Meaning what a contract is, a valid contract in one state, may not be a valid contract in another state. And as the United States grew, and as interstate commerce grew, there came a recognition in the United States, midway through the 20th century essentially, that we should have one sales law across the country. Now, the UCC is actually much broader than sales law. It covers a number of areas of commercial law, including things like bank deposits, negotiable instruments, secured transactions, but also the sale of goods. And so we're only going to be talking about that aspect of the UCC involving the sale of goods, which is to say Article 2 of the UCC. And what UCC did, adoption of the UCC, gave multiple states a version of the same sales law, which made it much easier for a company based in one state to sell goods to a company based in another state, which are then going to resell the goods to a third state. So the UCC, in effect, harmonized state law, because we know that start over. The UCC harmonized sales law. Why? Because it allowed goods to be manufactured in one state that may be warehoused in another state, that may then be sold from yet another state and delivered to another state. The UCC, because it harmonized sales law, gave us the goal of uniformity in commercial laws, uniformity in sales law. Thus, the states are able, the companies in the states are able to rely on the same source of law. Now, because it was a model law set for adoption by states, any state could modify the UCC, but the differences are minor, very minor, oftentimes just involving how the statutes are numbered, something along those lines. Now, the CISG is a treaty, the United Nations Convention on Contracts for the International Sale of Goods. And we'll call it the CISG, and the CISG is what we're going to study for the rest of the semester. The CISG attempted to unify international sales law in the same way that the UCC unified domestic sales law. So the CISG governs the sale of goods, again, only goods, tangible, movable items, between parties of different nations, if the parties are residents of countries that have signed, that have ratified the treaty. So the CISG was intended to unify international sales law. And it has done so in many respects, that at present the law of sales has evolved, and one of the ways it's done so is through this increased unification. This process of making national laws is known as the unification of law. What the CISG did is provide a widely accepted body of international sales law. And at recent count, 95 different countries have ratified the CISG, meaning the sales law that applies to international transactions is the same in all 95 countries. That the sales law of the United States, the international sales law of the United States, is the same law as China or France or South Korea or any of the other 90 nations that have adopted the CISG. So the CISG is the most international of laws because it is the same body of law utilized. It's the same contracting system utilized for international sales throughout the world. 95 different countries. Now the CISG, one of the big challenges of the CISG was how to develop a sales code that was acceptable to common law countries as well as civil law countries. And so as we go through our discussion of the CISG, one of the things we'll look at is how the CISG may be interpreted differently in a common law country versus a civil law country, but it is worded in a way that it did not draw opposition from either the common law country or the civil law country.